Welcome,
Thank you.
everybody. My name is Mina Jane, and I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library, and I'm super thrilled to be here with some of my favorite people, Kristan Higgins, Joss Day, and Mel Jolly. And Mel has a new book out. She's a debut author, so let's be kind to her. Before we get started, as a couple of housekeeping things. We are recording this and we're on Facebook live streaming this. So you guys can put questions in the Q&A. Chat is for chatter and for tech issues. I'll be taking questions also from Facebook. So, feel free to, wherever you are, join in the fun. I would like to thank the Friends of the Ashland Library who support all of our adult programming, actually all of our programming, and we couldn't do this without them. So thank you. All right, so I'm just going to go right into introductions because this trio of women is just like super awesome. So I'll start with Kristan. She is a New York Times, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly best-selling author of more than 20 novels. And her tagline is "Laugh, cry, laugh again," because you will. There's no question. I have laughed hysterically at her books, and I have sobbed hysterically at her books. So you can just the whole gamut, and she's such a wonderful writer. I'm sorry, I was going to go with your bio on your page, but I couldn't. I had to gush. Joss Day writes emotionally driven, epic urban fantasies that explore questions about love, family, and self amidst bizarre creatures, odd goings on in the end of the world. And I believe this started when your father gave you a giant book of world mythology when you were 8 years old.
All true. All true.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be talking about that, I'm sure.
Happy to.
And Mel Jolly, one of my also favorite people, is she has been like an assistant to the stars. She has helped lots and lots of people become the future selves that they want to be. And now she's written a book about it called Becoming Future You. And we're really excited to hear all about that because she has been spending a lot of time keeping people out of the loony bin. And now she's going to help us with that too.
Yay!
So I'm going to hand it over to you all. And I'm just going to ask you, Mel, if you could start with what made you decide to write a book with all of the other things that you were doing?
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Mina, and thanks, Friends of the Library. I used to be a library assistant way back in the day. So I know that all my programs were also sponsored by the Friends of the Library. So we love the Friends. Yay. So about a year, what's wrong? Did you forget something?
I totally forgot something. Can I interrupt for a second? Okay. So I forgot that Kristan and Joss also have a podcast called Crappy Friends. I don't know why I forgot that because that's like the biggest thing.
Oh, right.
So they're going to be talking about being crappy friends and what that all means and how to be a good friend, while Mel talks about being the best you. So now, Mel, please go on.
Please, Mel, continue.
Yes. Well, I really wanted to be a good friend, not a crappy friend. No. Well, I've wanted to write a book probably since I was 10-ish. I was in 4th grade, and our teacher had us write a story, and then she published it. So she gave us cardstock, and we made a cover, and then she stapled it all together, right? And it's the first time I had a book. And she also told me that I was a good writer. And when you're 10, like that's something that can like burrow into your heart and stay there. So every year, basically all the way through elementary school, I was very driven. Like I was like going to teach myself to play violin, and I taught myself a couple songs. I was going to teach myself to play piano. I also decided every summer was going to be the summer I wrote a book. So I wrote multiple children's stories when I was in elementary school. And then, like any good hero, I totally gave up on all my dreams. And one day I woke up in the ordinary world going, what happened? What happened to all my potential? And I had pursued some other things, but I finally decided. I was working with a coach, and she asked the question, which, you've probably heard before, but if you hear it at the right time, it really makes you think. She said, if you only had 6 months left to live, what would you do? And my immediate answer was I would get the book done. because I'd had the idea for becoming future you in my brain for several years. And to me, books are a special kind of legacy that get to live on after we're gone. And I knew that that was important to me. So that's really what pushed me to finally getting it done. That and learning how to work my calendar so that I could make time to write. Those were the two things that really pushed me.
I'm just going to say, as someone who has benefited from Mel's genius, it's what I love so much about your book and your philosophy is that there's no right way. There's no, you must do this, you must arise at 5 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, it's all what works best for you and how can we kind of maximize that? And also, how can we get you to stop working so that you can be a human being and have a life and enjoy the people around you?
Yeah.
So for me, you are unlike every other advice giver or coach or, you know, how-to book, because it's really so personal. And for me, it's the only thing that's worked.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that comes from, I'm a natural rebel. So anytime somebody says, do it this way, I'm like, I know 8 people that won't work for,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I just can't stop my brain from doing it. So eventually I figured out that my superpower is not telling people what to do. It's asking them the right questions.
Mm.
So the book is really just, it's packed full of questions meant to help you reflect and kind of jiggle the answers out of you, because I mean, like you said, I don't have the answers. You have the answers. That's your life. You're the only expert on being you. And if you don't want to get up at 5, don't get up at 5.
No, I never get up at 5. And I hope never to get up at
and
5.
You're successful, Kristan. How is that? How
Right,
is that possible?
Right. It's worked, right? Yeah.
I thought you could only be successful if you got up at 5.
Right. That is, and you know, that idea of kind of maximizing what works for you and also knowing when to turn off is really hard. I think, especially when you're a creative person, because you can work all the time, and sometimes we do. And it's not always good for the soul, the marriage, the family. So creating some boundaries for yourself and kind of taking care of yourself as you would a beloved friend, or, you know, something that you would say to your kid, I think is really important, and a message that gets lost, especially when you're self-employed, you know.
Yeah.
Or have a job where you can work 20 hours a day.
Yeah. And it's almost like we need a reminder that we're the ones who give ourselves permission to stop working. You don't really need permission from anybody else. So like, Kristan, you just took your social media break.
Yeah.
How was that? That's your annual time off.
I started doing it a couple of years ago because social media is one of those holes that cannot be filled. You could do it 20 times a day and people would love it, you know?
Yeah.
And as an author, it's really important to interact with your readers. And that's such a rewarding and special part of the job. I have so many readers that I've become friends with through social media. And I feel very like loved and supported by so many people. But, you know, as I said, I could do it 10 times a day. I could spend an hour a day on it. So saying each year I'll take 3 weeks off around Christmas time, it just kind of gives me permission to step back into a magical time when there was no social media. And
which we all remember.
That, you know, I miss my people. I miss my friends. We have friend groups and reader groups and common interest groups. But what's so great about that is that when I get back in January, I'm so happy to be back. And I'm not thinking like, oh, you know, I have all these, you know, notes to answer. I have to find some interesting content to post. I'm really excited to be back. So it's the pause that refreshes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that works for you and that you figured out works, and you give yourself permission to do it, which is amazing. Because especially when I've been working with authors for 11 years at this point, and usually I work with authors who have a significant level of success, and I know a lot of them feel the pressure like they can't like somehow everything they built will just completely crumble away if they step away for even a minute. And it's not true. You're still here.
Right. And probably better for it. On a similar note, Joss and I, who call each other twins because we have so much in common, Joss takes a break around Christmas time too.
My break. You guys, I work for a university, so I get off the week of Christmas. So usually from the 23rd to whenever the first lands. And I rack up vacation time so I can take off like the week before and the week after.
Oh.
I spend time preparing for this break. I come up with a list of things to watch, a list of things to read. There's a whole list I keep, and I'm not allowed to watch them or read them until the break.
Oh, nice.
About the break. And then in the past, I've told a few lies to people so I can get out of going to events, so I can have my break to myself. I don't do that anymore. I'm much better. I have learned my lesson. I simply tell the truth, which is better.
I would, but I don't want to come.
Yes. No, I don't think that.
Oh, okay.
No. And then I spend time doing whatever I want, whenever I want for 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
It's a lot. I don't have children. I'm not married. I only have a dog. She is demanding, but is manageable. And so it's like the most amazing break away. It feels so good. It really does. If anyone can manage that, I think you should do it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be around wintertime or Christmas time. Whenever you have time to take like a solid chunk off, I think it's the best thing you can do for yourself. And it sort of is like taking a social media break. It's like just taking a break for everything that sort of stresses you out, trying to really recharge, which reading and watching good shows on TV really does for me.
Mm-hmm.
Walks, things like that. During the pandemic, I did not do anything productive because it was a pandemic. And so during this break, I tried to do a few things like people are, baking. So I tried to do a few things, started making some different foods. I made the most delicious rack of pork for my parents.
What's a rack of pork?
It's like a rack of lamb, but like pork. And it's like 10 pounds. And I did all these amazing things. And here's the compliment that my mom gave me that I will live out on for the rest of my life. This is better than anything I could have ever made. I'm done. I don't need to do anything more. I'm good.
Oh my gosh.
I'm good. Nothing more needs to be done.
Yeah.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah.
So Carrie on Facebook says, Kristan is amazing, but write faster. And Julie Donner here says, there is no really actually 5 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't exist. But I wanted to ask all of you a question, because when I was like 8 years old, I wrote a book. I wrote a Nancy Drew book. It was horrible. It was a romance, and she and Ned, sort of got it on as much as an 8-year-old would allow that to happen. And
but we were always waiting for it. What was taking
if
so
you've seen
long?
the show, you know that stuff happens. But anyways, I threw it away. I thought it was junk, and I threw it away, and it was like my biggest regret. So like, what got you guys to really stick to it and make that your future selves, to be authors and to be teachers and to be keeping people out of the loony bin? What made that work for you?
Well, I didn't stick to it.
Go ahead, Mel.
I mean, that's the short answer. I didn't stick to it. And part of what, to like go off of what Kristan was saying, but the beauty about what I teach is you can redefine yourself at any age.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I was 36. I'm 37. I don't know how old I am. Anyway, whatever age I was the age that I decided I want to be an author. And this is something I'm actively going to pursue. So it's never too late, Nancy Drew, to pick it back up.
I think that's one of the best things about writing is that you don't age out. It's not like you have to have physical stamina or look or whatever, you know, like if you're a supermodel, maybe it's harder to get jobs when you're 50, but when you're an author, it's not. For me, it was the idea that time will pass no matter what. And I remember not going to graduate school because I remember thinking like, gosh, that's 3 years. That's such a long time. And, you know, those 3 years passed anyway. And I was, you know, I had no advanced degree and I was still working for poverty wages. But when I decided to write a book, I think my motivation was largely family-based. You know, I wanted to continue to stay home with my kids. And I thought, what could I do that might make some extra money on the side other than waitressing or bartending or cleaning houses, which are my other, you know, 2.5 skills. And I thought maybe I could write a book, you know, and so if anyone who's watching is an aspiring writer, I want you to know that nobody's born published, that everybody has to write their crappy first draft, that everybody wonders, is this good enough? Can I really do it? What was I thinking? And some of us get published and we end up making a living on our work. So never talk yourself out of that. Never say like, this is too unrealistic. And I also think, you know, having a good work ethic helps. I couldn't work for 8 hours a day. I couldn't work for 4 hours a day. I had little kids. So I'd work steadily when I could, you know, when they were napping, when they went to bed, and just kept at it. And I guess the question was sort of like, well, why not me?
Mm-hmm.
Why not be someone who finished a book and then went ahead to get an agent and went ahead to get published and get another contract, you know? So I think we all have to have a little faith in ourselves. Like, why not? Why not us? Why not be the one who can write a book? And I know you mentioned Mina, one of our listeners tonight is Julie Donor, and I knew her before she was published, and she is a teacher and she wrote a book on the side, and she became like Canada's breakout author for the year that her debut novel came out. So like it happens all the time. And I think people should remember that.
Mm-hmm. I wish I'd known you when I was 8.
Well, you still have time.
I wasn't like that when I was 8.
I talked myself out of it at multiple occasions when other people were trying to talk me into it. So in college, my first English professor told me, you know, after I handed in a paper, you should think about doing this for a living. And I was like, huh. And then didn't do anything about it. And then realized I couldn't really do anything except for read really well. And so went to grad school. And went to grad school for creative writing and got my fine arts degree in creative writing and thought, and then I talked myself out of it again because I needed a job and I needed to pay off the student loans that I took out in order to go to grad school. Talked myself out of it again. And then I moved around the country a bit and finally was back in Connecticut with my parents and joined CTRWA. And a person who is on this call helped me to realize and finish my first book, which was really great, and got that published. It hit a list, which I was really excited about. And then I've run into trouble since then, but I'm not talking myself out of it anymore. A little blocked. Mel has been very helpful, slightly blocked, but yes. But it's not me really talking myself out of it. It's me trying to move forward and just feeling a little blocked, you know, the pandemic and all the rest.
Right. And like Joss, we wrote Crappy Friends. We are fascinated by female friendship. And that's one of the reasons that we became friends and kind of like locked into each other, because we were both sort of unhealthfully obsessed with female friendship dynamics and how much we will put up with from a female friend versus how much we should put up with and what's healthy for us and how much time do we give to which people. And we had always talked about writing a book. And then I said one day, like, let's just do a podcast because I think I might have some software on my computer already. So we literally sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and like hit play, you know, hit record and started podcasting. And then when it came time for the book, I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just, we have all the material in our heads. Let's just, you write this chapter, I'll write that chapter.
We did it.
And
I have to say.
there is that sort of like, just jump into the deep end of the ocean there and you find out you can swim.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think
And
for you guys, well, for you two, there's something to be said for choosing a different format, like especially if anybody is looking at writing a nonfiction book, or even if you're looking at writing fiction, but choosing a short format where you can get a little bit of a following. I know some people do this on Wattpad or other places, but you guys kept putting out the podcast episodes, and I listened to all those beginning episodes. And then when I read the book, I was like, oh, okay, they sorted through this out loud together, right? In all those episodes, and you were able to get feedback and you were able to get reader letters. And then by the time you wrote the book, Josh, you're saying was actually pretty fast. Well, you two had sort of like already mentally sorted it out and then just had to put it into book format. And the same was true for me. I've been writing my newsletter for 8 years.
There you go.
Yeah.
And working with coaching clients and working with authors and picking up all this information. So by the time I sat down to write it, it actually didn't take me that long, but it had been marinating for so long. And I've been practicing writing for so long.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I love about your work, Mel, is how accessible it is. I get your newsletters and have read your book. And of course, I'm your client. But sometimes I'll think like, I don't have time for self-care today. I'm on a deadline and I must type 20 pages. And her self-care is like, stretch or breathe, take one breath, one meaningful breath. I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that. Drink some water. I can do that,
Right.
And those little pieces make such a great foundation for getting you into a better headspace.
Mm-hmm.
And I also loved, before there was future you, there was past you, and your newsletters would talk about like what I would have told myself 10 years ago about why this isn't going to work, like Joss was saying, talking myself out of it, and what I could tell myself now, or like where I want to be in a few years. My future self will have this all under control. And here's how. All these
Right.
pieces, the ones that work for you, you can pick and choose and discard the ones that don't. And before you know it, you've built up some really good habits, not just for work, but for living and
oh yeah. And it's about starting to make that connection between past, present, and future you, because you've got so much you can learn from past you. And one of the things that I try to slowly, gently, lovingly teach people is to stop sabotaging their future self. So like, I'm a reasonably responsible adult, but I legit used to swipe my credit card at things and call it the worry about it later card. Like, Mel, future Mel's got to figure out how to pay for that now in 45 days. What are you doing?
Yes.
So it's a matter of thinking a little bit further ahead and going, okay, well, if I, like with procrastination, if I don't work on this thing now, I'm deciding now what future me has to do with her time. And that's how I fixed procrastination for me, was I don't like being told what to do even by myself. So trying to give future Mel some time freedom by not waiting till the last minute to get stuff done.
And I don't know if I'm reading into this, Mel, but like there's an element of forgiving yourself for back when you didn't take the opportunities, didn't say yes, didn't lean in, whatever jargon you want to use, where you could say, well, I mean, for personally, way back when I was 22 years old and not even out of college, National Geographic offered me a job and I turned it down. And I still think like, what would your life have been like, Higgins, if you had taken it? It could have been incredible, right? Or I could have been fired after 2 months. Nobody knows. But you have to kind of let go of those opportunities you missed and incorporate them into a learning tool of like, I passed up on this potentially incredible experience. Maybe I'll keep that in mind the next time another experience presents itself.
Yeah, especially if you can answer the question like, why did I pass on it? You know, was it a fear-based response, or was it, you know?
Right, exactly. It was fear-based. It was too new. It was too far. You know, I didn't know anybody in the DC area. My family wasn't from there. And, you know, rather than put myself up for
You
another-
weren't best friends yet, Joss.
I know.
I also lived in DC.
That would have been amazing.
In DC. We could
Listen,
you could have
the
been
answer is
in Attleboro right now. Oh my God.
you still would have been friends
Yes.
with these other people. That's what the answer is if you had taken the job.
Right. But you know, you do have to, like, you can't live in regret. And I think
No.
that's a really great message from your newsletter and workshop stuff, Mel, that, you know, you can't keep thinking, oh, I should have finished that degree, or should have gone to a different college, or shouldn't have married
Should've
that guy, or whatever it is.
Or I should have started that sooner.
Hmm.
Like I would year after year after year be like, I'd finish the year frustrated because I'm like, well, didn't write a book this year.
Right.
Didn't finish that thing this year, and just living in that place of regret and beating myself up for not having done it. Meanwhile, like you said, time keeps passing.
Yep.
You know, those years keep passing, but I'm busy going, what was wrong with you? Why didn't you take care of that thing for me?
Yeah. I know, Joss, we get a lot of that in the podcast, and you know, from our letter writers, people saying, like, I spent 20 years in this friendship. I can't let it go, even though it's been 20 crappy years of friendship.
Right.
Yeah.
Or why didn't I dump her sooner? You know, because now I'm 60 and I could have had 30 years where I wasn't having this negative friend sucking the life out of me.
Right.
And you know, you have to start where you are, I
Mhm.
think, with relationships, with your job, with your hopes and aspirations, and just say, like, what do I have now that I can work with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a mantra that really helps me, that may help others, is I just remind myself past Mel was doing the best she could. Because if I really think about it, there's really never a moment that I'm not doing the best I can. You know, even if the best I can is I'm exhausted, I'm going to sit on this couch right now.
Yeah.
That's the best I can do. And most people, can't remember which book I read this in. I can't remember which one, but I was reading a book and they're talking about how in general, most people are always doing the best they can. So if you can just apply that to yourself and go, okay, yes, I made a mistake, but I didn't have information that I have now. I didn't know how this thing was going to turn out. I didn't know what that other person was going to do. Shockingly, I can't tell the future. So, and I'm not a mind reader. So I was making the best decision I could at the time, or I was doing the
Right.
best I could. And oh, wait, wasn't I sick that week? I
Right.
was sick that week.
Right. And I always think, like, and this is something Joss and I say on the podcast, what would you tell your friend if you were
Mhm.
hearing what you're saying? Right. So, like, I'll say, well, you know, I finished a book, but it's not very good. And I whatever, it's probably going to end my career. I have said this, well, I've written 22 books now, so I've said it 21 times. And right. And
Yes.
Joss knows. And I think, like, oh, I'm just, you know, tricking people. They think my books are good, and they think,
No one's
like,
going to read this.
no one's going to read this. No one's going to like this.
Yeah.
They're finally going to see that I'm a fraud. And then I think I wrote the best book that I could in the time that I had with the life that was happening around
Yeah.
me. You know, you don't always get those perfect moments of, like, now the beam of light comes down and shines on your really great chair, and that's telling you this is your time to write a book. You know, unfortunately, that's not how it works.
I think it's really important that you say that, Kristan, because, and I don't know if you go through a similar process, Joss, but most of my clients that I have worked with over the entirety of my career have all said that same thing. And that was an eye-opening thing for me, you know, and I generally don't get starstruck, not by authors anyway. Like if I met Chris Hemsworth,
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, come on.
somebody need to hold me back because the arms.
Yeah.
But anyway, I generally don't get starstruck, and I realized that authors are just regular people with insecurities like the rest of us, because almost all my clients say that thing. Whatever book they're working on, It's the worst one they've ever written. It's going to tank their career. It comes out and they're like, it's the best one yet.
My husband, I often am very lucky to get a starred review from a major review site like Library Journal or Kirkus or Publishers Weekly. And my husband says, you tricked him again, honey. Because he's so used to me saying like, this book is no good, it's just all tricks and smoke and mirrors. And like,
speaking of husbands
again. So I think that is really helpful to remember that, and it's not just for authors, but like I know elite athletes and movie stars and singers and stuff, they have the same thoughts,
Yeah. I was reading Amy Poehler's book, and one of the things she kept talking about was she was sure people were going to figure out soon that she was tricking them.
Right.
No, I don't think so.
So I just want to ask, Willow on Facebook says that she loves that special bond that Kristan and Joss have, and says that she hangs on your every word.
Well,
and Jennifer says, it's such a great podcast. I appreciate the topics covered, especially the EPP section.
So that was my bright idea, which right now,
but is Joss.
I actually kind of regret it. I said, let's come up with a segment. Why don't we just talk about the embarrassing things that are happening to us? And at the time I was having some female problems and, decided to share with the class. And it really picked up and has a lot of own. People have sent in just EPPs, not an advice letter, just the EPP, and they have been so epic.
Oh my God.
My favorite one, which I will never forget, is from a listener who had diarrhea and ended up pooping in a grocery bag. I can't tell you the kind of joy that letter gave me.
We walked on air after eating that.
Gold, pure solid gold.
It was it's such a humanizing element. And God knows we have, between the two of us, there's another book, right?
Yeah.
But that humanity of there I was, stuck in the wilderness with my period, or no bathroom facilities, or trying to get out of this bad date and lying and the things that we do to try to cope with that moment. It has brought us a lot of joy. The embarrassing personal problems. Send us yours. The ladies at crappyfriends.net.
I feel like that just triggered like 18 memories.
I mean, you keep triggering anonymous. I don't know why people are so reluctant to this. I'm not going to out you, Mel, about your diarrhea problem. Why would I do that?
Joss, you said you'd never tell anybody. It was me. Well, no, literally while you're explaining that though, I'm thinking like, what are the circumstances that you were able to get your pants down?
Yeah.
That can be like little diapers though.
I can't remember. This listener said that the toilet was not close. She was in Europe, France maybe.
Where you have to pay to get into the bathroom as well.
And she might have only had a bag, and that's how she dealt with the issue, I think. That's
Her
what it was.
roommate was in the bathroom.
Right.
Oh.
Taking far too long.
Far too long. That's right.
And she didn't feel she could go in and interrupt her roommate's shower with
this
stomach distress. So she took matters into her own hands, as they say.
Was there a part where she put the bag on the countertop?
Oh God!
And got it there? Yes. Yeah,
oh my gosh! Oh,
I'm telling you, it was golden. It was epic.
Oh, that is so crappy friends, right, literally.
Yes.
Well done, Mina.
Okay.
Always come to the rescue with the poop joke.
I think that's one of the things that we have in common, Mel, with Becoming Future You and with Crappy Friends, is that there's this element of wasted time, that you've put so much effort into something that you feel you can't ever walk away from it, because like working on that degree for 17 years or or trying to finish your novel for 17 years, or you've been friends since you were 10, and even though you're so exhausted from dealing with this person, you feel like, I can't just cut loose and start over. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Like, what's your advice to people who feel that way?
And actually, can I do a little add-on to that question? Because I was so interested in this particular topic, because I feel like spending that time on crappy friends really can really affect the future you. And so I'm wondering, like, what is that connection in terms of not just the time, but like the mental distress that happens?
Yeah. Well, now I'm gonna mix it up, and I can't remember if I said it this way in the book or just in the course or in both. But I talk about people being either cheerleaders or energy thieves. Like, surely maybe I called them enemies and allies. That's what I called them in the book. Hero's journey. So there are people in your life who you spend time with, maybe because you've been friends for 30 years, maybe because they're family, maybe it's forced proximity and you're at work. But those people who, after you're done talking with them, you either feel like drained, tired, or your mind is going so fast because now you're thinking of all the responses you should have used, but couldn't come up with at the time. And those people are just taking and taking and taking all this energy from you. And you only have so much energy every day. So you start every day with a set amount of energy, and you get to decide where it goes. And sometimes the decision you're making is, I'm going to spend it with this person who makes me feel like garbage. And it's one of the things that I ask people to do is not only make that assessment of who's in your life, but look outside your inner circle. About 8 years ago or so, I started my journey of becoming positive future Mel. And none of you knew me back then, but I was the most negative person I knew. And I know, right? It's shocking. It's shocking. But I gossiped all the time. If anything good happened, I waited for the other shoe to drop. I cried every day. I was just miserable. And I was very good at making everybody around me miserable as well. So my sweet husband, who is adorable and wonderful, and sat me down and said, you can't keep being so negative. And I was like, what? I took it really well, like there were more tears and he doesn't even remember this, by the way, but it's one of the best things he could have done, because it got me thinking, like, well, can I do anything about it? Can I do anything about it? And I didn't know how to become a positive person, but I decided that I had to, that it mattered to me and I needed to make this change in my life. And so on December 31st, 2014, I decided I'm going to become a positive person. And I told my best friend at the time, and crappy friends, I said, I'm going to become a positive person. And she said, I don't want you to. She said, I want you to be my negative, snarky friend. Oh. And luckily for me, that was the huge wake-up call about who was in my life. I never would have thought that deeply. You hear the old, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Then it just goes one ear out the other. You don't think about it. But I thought, if that's her response, who have I surrounded myself with? And if I looked in my inner circle, they were all negative. They all gossiped. We talked about my mother-in-law, because a lot of them were my sisters-in-law, and complained about our husbands. And it was awful. And I felt like I had nobody in my life who was going to support me in becoming positive. So if there's anybody out there who feels like you're stuck in these friendships, you're afraid you're going to be alone if you cut them off. I did what you guys call the slow fade, right? So I just kept stepping back from these negative friends. And lo and behold, there were other people in my life. I just hadn't given them any attention. So as I let some of those negative people go, it made space for, like, my grandpa was one of the most positive people and so loving, so supportive, didn't understand the internet at all. like they never had the internet in their house. So, but he would always ask me how my job was going, always wanted to talk about my business. And he was so encouraging and positive. 2014 Mel wouldn't have been like, oh, grandpa is the person who will support me. Oh, this friend will support me. Oh, that friend, because I was too busy focusing on all the negatives. So I think it's a matter of taking inventory where you're at. I call this like present you. Who are present you's closest friends? And then starting to pay attention. How do you feel when you talk to those friends? And then going, okay, well, how would I like to feel in relationship? And I think your podcast, guys, is great for that, because it gives people an example of, oh, what does a good friendship look like? What might I have? What might I be worthy of? I wish I could have a friendship like Kristan and Joss. You know how many listeners probably feel that way, right? You can have a friendship like Kristan and Joss, or your version of that level of a close friendship. And some people, that means, we see each other once a month, and that's how they want their close friendship to be. Others, want to be on the couch watching Netflix and drinking wine together all the time.
Yeah. A lot of what we do is giving people permission.
Uh-huh.
Like, oftentimes we get these letters and the answer is right there in the letter. You've already told yourself what you're supposed to do. But we read it on the podcast, and I feel like it gives people permission to do the things that you're talking about, Mel, which is taking stock of who's around them and what they bring to their life.
Yeah.
And how you feel around them, like there's some people that we all have people in our lives by necessity, your relatives, your cousin's husband, whatever. And maybe you just have to deal with them, but you feel exhausted afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Or they suck all the air from the room, and you just feel like you have nothing to say, don't want to say anything, just counting the minutes till you can leave. And then there are the people you say like, wow, I had a virtual drink with Joyce last week, and we talked for 3 hours and we just laughed the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe I should have more of that,
Yeah.
And you kind of curate the time that you spend. And what we talk about in friendship is what you talk about, Mel, in your whole Becoming Future You, is cultivating. How are you going to spend your time, your energy? I love what you say about like, you have so much energy every day. Maybe the energy gets spent on your dog, or taking a nap, or you write 30 pages of your new book, or you take your mom to the hospital.
Yeah.
You can't really choose and assign, but sometimes, but you can compartmentalize a little bit. And you can say, okay, well, yesterday was mom day, and today I'm going to take at least an hour and focus it on the good stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll have to go back to the hospital with mom tomorrow. But you get to make those decisions. And I think it's so, I hate this word, but it's so empowering, because it gives you the decisions of how your day is going to unfold. And even if you have just a little bit of time to spend on whether it's work or yourself or your friends or your romantic relationships, it is your choice. And you get to like acknowledge that and really visualize it, really see it in this concrete form when you're having Mel tell you, pay attention, like all these things are happening. Grab onto one and sit down and take a look at it and use it. Which is, again, I love your philosophy, because it's all these little parts.
Yeah.
What works, and you build something huge.
Yeah. And it's one step at a time. I mean, Becoming Future You is a lifelong journey, and you're meant to enjoy the journey, so you have these goals and these dreams, but they're just meant to like kind of guide you along the way. And so you meet these people and you learn these things and you have these experiences. But one of the big things that I try to teach people is almost everything you do is a choice. And I think especially caregivers, so your example is perfect, like taking mom to the hospital. There are a lot of things in our lives that we do because we think we have to, and you don't have to do anything, right? So you choose to take mom to the hospital, and what a beautiful choice.
Yeah.
If that's the choice you want to make and that's something you do out of love, and once you accept like, oh, this is a choice and I am doing this out of love, it gives you some of your power back. Like people always think I'm crazy when I say this. You don't have to take care of your kids. There are a lot of people who don't, but most of the people I work with don't give themselves any credit for like keeping their children alive. You know what I mean? They're like, I just didn't get anything done. Are your kids still alive? Are they fed? Did they go to school? You did get a lot done. I have a friend who has 4 kids under the age of 12. Like, that's what you're getting done, honey. You are raising 4 kids.
Right.
You deserve credit for that just as much as I deserve credit for writing the book. That's where I spent my energy. This is where you're spending your energy. Neither one of us has to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's sort of legal for her to do it.
But some people still don't.
Little details.
That is true. But that's illegal.
There are a lot of kids in foster care because parents did
know.
not take care of them.
So we have a few more minutes, and Noreen asks, do you have any tips about getting over rejection? She's talking about traditional publishing, but I think this is a wider, a broader based question. Like when you do get rejected from anything in life, how do you pick yourself up from it? And Joss, I was going to kind of start with you because I feel like you said that you've struggled a little bit, especially in the last year and, you know, things like that. So I was wondering if you could speak to that and then we could go around a bit.
Sure. I was rejected a lot. I used to keep a file of all the rejections. I know Kristan has one or had one from traditional publishers. And despite the fact that I kept talking myself out of writing my book, I did finish it. And I did think it was worthwhile enough to be published. So I published it myself. And I think the idea of rejection is more, it's for me, it's more about what I know I'm capable of, what I know I can do. It's more about knowing yourself than it is about believing what anyone else is rejecting you for. I've been talking about this with a friend who's been trying to find a job for the longest time, and she internalizes the fact that no one will look at her resume, even though she's very qualified. And there are a million different reasons, as you all know, I'm sure, why someone is not going to look at your resume or doesn't choose to interview you or for whatever reason. But she's internalized that like it's something wrong with her, that rejection. And she needs to be reminded, I'm happy to remind her, that you are awesome. You are awesome. Your resume, the job that you didn't get, the book that's not being accepted by a traditional publisher does not get to dictate how worthwhile you are or your contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're
I feel like that was really a great answer to that question. I don't know who wants to follow up on that.
And your friend is so lucky to have you to remind you of that, to remind her of that.
Mm-hmm.
And is it, I can only remember half of the Eleanor Roosevelt quote. You guys can help me. No one can make you feel inferior without your permission.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So my theory on that is that what happens when you feel inferior based on what somebody else said is they're echoing a thought you've already had about yourself. And to you, they're validating it. So it's that internal conversation you're having with yourself that says, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, my book's not good enough, whatever it is. So then you get the rejection. You're like, more proof that I am not XYZ. I am not good enough. And we find what we look for. So if we're looking for proof that we're not good enough, we'll find it all over the place.
Yeah,
Just to follow up, I would say that, did I forget what I was going to say?
We still love you, Joss.
It's about the Eleanor Roosevelt quote.
No, but no, it wasn't about that. It was about that I'm not good at not internalizing rejection. Like I still do it all the time. Mm-hmm. So this like reminding yourself of that you're worthwhile and who you are and what you are capable of it's every day. You're doing that every day. That's what I was going to say. There. Now I'm done.
I would say, Noreen, rejection is part of life. You know, it's the teacher who didn't make you the star student when you were 10. It's the guy who didn't ask you to the prom, or who broke up with you and married some worse, lesser person than you. The promotion you didn't get. Rejection is everywhere, and it doesn't mean that it was you. It doesn't mean that it wasn't you either. Maybe you weren't the right person for that romantic relationship. Maybe you weren't the right person for the job. Maybe it's not the right time for your genre of book. Maybe you just don't have it in you this week to go to the gym, and those kind of like little losses and little failures, they can add up, but it's your decision how powerful they are. They do happen, but they don't have to be a confirmation that I'm a horrible person. It could just, you can say like, okay, so right now my book isn't getting traction with traditional publishers. Maybe next year that will change. Let me keep working on something new. See if there's that. Or, what can I make my book better? Can I take a fresh look at it through this lens of rejection and say, okay, maybe they have a point. Let me keep moving forward, fix that, start something new. But it's, the thing that I love a saying in publishing is it only takes one yes, and then you have a career. I was rejected by every traditional publisher except one. And back in the day, that was like 30 imprints, 30 editors said no to me, at least 50 agents. And I kept going because I thought, I've worked really hard on this. I'm measuring myself against the best authors that I can find and trying to reach that bar. And I think it's good. So I bet there are other people out there who will think it's good too. And you just kind of have to keep walking the walk, And then once you get published, you'll get the crap review and you'll be like, oh my God, what have I done? Why did I get published? Why did I put myself out there for people to judge me? And they will, and they'll write to you to tell you.
So sometimes you think, you took time out of your day to write this email and send it to me. And I've seen everything because of the nature of my job. But sometimes you think, what?
I like to name characters after the people who write me those.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I really didn't think this was your best work and you could do better, Kristan, but you're not as funny as you think you are. Like, okay, you're going to die in chapter 3.
Are you going to write romances and not murder mysteries?
I feel like you should, in honor of that person who wrote into Crappy Friends, there should be a character who like diarrheas herself to death.
Nice verb. Love it.
It's a word, I think.
That is a word. 100% a word. I did want to bring up also, like, don't forget, particularly with writers, there are a million different super uber famous writers who have their origin story where everyone rejected them and hated them, and George R.R. Martin, and even I just learned recently Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune, which is iconic. No one would publish it, and I think it was like a machine magazine finally published it, or an automotive magazine published it finally.
Yeah, Stephen King used to write for women's magazines. His short stories would be like in Playboy and stuff.
Yeah,
and Frank's diary was rejected for being depressing.
Come on.
So put everything in context and just keep moving forward. Mel, I wanted to ask you, because I saw it on Facebook and I know we're running out of time. You have a course going on. Do you know?
I do. I do. It's called Unlock Your 5-Star Future. And it's like a super deep dive into the things I talk about in the book. So everything, like we were talking about, I try to tailor everything for you. What do you want out of your life? What works for you? You're the expert on being you. So I designed this course because 8 years ago, negative, miserable, trying to drag everybody down with her Mel, who then decides to be positive and doesn't have anybody who's going to support her. She needed a course like this, like something to walk her through and go, okay, well, I know you feel tender and I know you feel stuck and I know you don't know what to do next. Here's here's how we start moving forward. Here's how we start looking at your relationships. Like one of the things we do in week 4 or 5 of the course is I have you create your star squad. So like, who are the people in your life whose opinions matter? And you got to write it in this teeny tiny little space. And that is something I learned from Brene Brown, because that was such an eye opener for me. She was like, take this tiny square and write down the names of all the people whose opinions matter. Like, who gets a say? And I'm like, oh, well, I've only come up with 3 names. So that's so liberating. I don't have to care about all these other people's opinions.
Right.
So it's about creating positive habits, learning to find what you look for and make the things you look for things that are going to serve you. So we do gratitude, and I have you write down things you're grateful for every day. It's just all my teachings compiled into an 8-week course. And it's for people who feel like they can't focus. They feel like they're not motivated. They maybe have big dreams, but they can't even accomplish their small goals. So as year after year after year after year go by, they think about that Nancy Drew novel that they wrote when they were 8, and they're just living in regret. No,
I just put some salt in my wound.
I know, right? Tina, I think you have access to the course, don't you? Did you go through it yet?
I went through it when you first did it.
I know I've taken the course too, and you know, I have a great career, and I have had a great career for a number of years, but it helps me too. It helps like quiet down the noise and focus on creating a really quality life. And it, you know, it sounds kind of cheesy, but you know, surrounding yourself with the people you love, letting them know that you appreciate them, making time for the things that are important to you, and feeling like a productive, responsible member of society. I mean, that's what we're all here for. So I highly recommend the class.
Thanks. And it's about creating your version of a meaningful life. It took me years to figure out that that's what I was trying to do for people. But I think everybody deserves to live a life of meaning. And it hurts my heart when I see people who either think it's too late for them, whatever, which by the way, I've talked to people who are like 29 and it's too late for them, right? Whereas anybody who's older than that is, oh, honey. But people who feel like it's too late for them or feel like they don't have anything special to offer, man, we all have unique skills. We all do. Just because your skills aren't on display, like in a book or on a TV show, you're no less special than Chris Hemsworth. Your arms might not look the same.
The abs.
It's a bad, right?
It really is. It's a bad one.
Or Scarlett Johansson, right? Whoever. I watch a lot of Marvel, guys, so that's really all I know. But you have special skills, and they might be that you give the best compliments, you know, and all your friends would be so lost without your amazing compliments, but you don't even realize that it's a skill. So it's for people who feel stuck and would like to not feel that way anymore. And it is, I dropped the link in the chat. It's at becomingfutureyou.com/unlock. And it closes tomorrow at midnight. So, and it's buy one, gift one right now.
Oh, that's
so
great.
2 people in for the price of 1. So make a friend and join us.
So it ends, registration ends tomorrow. And then when does it start and how long is it?
It starts right away and it's 8 weeks long.
Got it. Okay.
And it's easy. It's not like
make it
got
super
3 hours
easy.
of homework to do on top of everything else. It's a very uplifting,
it's gentle
class. Yeah.
I always assume that other people are overwhelmed, like I can get, and they don't have time. I don't have time. So I figured, do you have 15 minutes? You can do it in about 15 minutes a day. I keep the videos really short. I keep the homework really, really like divided up for you. I learned that after several years of teaching. And I'm like, okay, no. On this day, you only have to answer these 3 questions. Because we gotta keep it. I don't want anybody to leave feeling like a failure because it was too overwhelming.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they would, because you know it's such a manageable, logical thing, and it's so personalized. You know, it's not, again, it's not like you have to get up at 5 a.m., Kristan, and that's when you do your best work. It's not true for me, you know.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in female friendships, we have Crappy Friends, the book. Write to us at theladies@crappyfriends.net if you have friendship problems.
Or embarrassing personal problems.
Embarrassing personal problems we're especially fond of.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll give our best advice. We are qualified just by being women and friends.
Mhm.
And the thing I love most about the Crappy Friends podcast is it always sounds like you two are having the best time. And it just feels like you're a third party, like in the room. And, you know, sometimes you guys have other people on and Dr. Khaleesi comes to visit, some of your other friends, but you feel like you're an additional person at the party.
Aw, thanks, Mel.
Yeah, I love it. I look like a crazy person out walking this dog here because I'm walking down the street laughing.
So just before we go, I'm just going to ask you really quick, what's up next for you? What's happening with the Crappy Friends? What's happening with your next book? Kristan, let's start with you.
I have a book out in June called Out of the Clear Blue Sky. It's a funny novel about a 40-something woman whose husband leaves her the day that her only child goes to college, and she jumps the rails a little on the crazy train. As for Crappy Friends, you know, we just really enjoy it. It's a labor of love, and we recommend the book for anyone from like age 12 to 89.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 90, you should know what you're doing by now.
Got a great cover too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you.
Did you?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Jess, what's up next for you?
I don't know what we're doing at Crappy Friends, just more podcasts, more embarrassing personal problems. I'm working on a book that's part of a series that I've been working on that's also about a menopausal woman. Did you say, you said 40-year-old, Kristan?
I didn't say menopausal, but
I'm saying
it. Yeah.
I'm saying it because I kind of got tired. Like I write urban fantasy and I love fantasy, but I kind of got tired of the trope where it's the teenager who has all these hormones and then gets this superpower and then goes and saves the world. And I was like, dude, I've got hormones. I've got a ton of hormones. I could save the world. So that's the book I'm writing now.
Please tell me, are there like night sweats as part of this, or
yeah, there are.
This is like a new fun symptom that I'm experiencing.
Yes. And it's a superpower, by the way. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yes.
Right. It would be great if the mood swings could be.
It's a superpower.
Yeah. Thunderstorms and lightning bolts.
Excellent.
Yeah, there's an X-Men character who's like that.
Yeah.
I just never realized that she was in menopause.
That's what it is. I agree. That's what it is.
All right, Mel, what's up for next for you?
I'm working on the next book, which is called Stop Sabotaging Future You.
Ooh.
I'm really excited about this one, and I'm going to cover things like procrastination and perfectionism. I'm writing the book for Joss, basically.
Yes,
we're just going to confer. She's going to tell me all the issues she has, and then I'm going to put it into book form.
I am down. I'm so down.
Okay, we're going to schedule a call, but
right.
Seriously. And I also have a podcast. It's the Becoming Future You podcast. So I'm going to continue knocking out episodes on that. Usually it's just me chatting with you about what's going to work for you, like Kristan says, and asking you a lot of probing questions. No, they're easy questions. Sort of.
Can you put the link for your podcast in the chat as well?
I can.
Awesome.
I've got them all as shortcuts. Everyone, by the way, Text Expander. Text Expander is the best computer app ever of all time. You can't turn off the organizational part of my brain.
She's always giving us good hints. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I've learned a lot, and oh my gosh, I think my brain's going to explode from all the laughing. But this has been super interesting, and I really look forward to everything that you guys are going to be putting out in the next year. And I hope that that some of our attendees will check out your podcast, get your books. You can find their books at any online retailer or your independent bookstores. And Mel, I think Becoming Future You is also like everywhere, right?
It is everywhere, in print, in paperback and hardback and ebook, audiobook coming when I finish recording it. But I did want to tell everybody who's here, if you buy a copy of Becoming Future You, let me know. And I have goodies to send you. I dropped my email address in the chat, but I will send you a printed journal, companion journal that goes along with the book, and some stickers and a bookmark and a book plate if you order a print copy. My stickers are awesome, by the way. What would future you do?
If
You wrote your own story.
You get nothing.
What's that?
You
Oh,
get the book. We have no swag.
No.
Higgins.
We have our very best wishes.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, I'm just
Thank
going to
you,
stick those
Mina.
on my
Thanks,
water
Ashland
bottle.
Library.
Absolutely. I do want to say that
Thank
Julie
you.
on Facebook says, Mel, you seem like you're super cool. So
Oh, thanks.
yes,
I think so.
I think so too. Again, thanks for everybody who's been here, and thank you all for joining us tonight, Mel, Kristan, Joss. This has been really a lovely, lovely way to spend an evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. See you
Absolutely.
soon.
Good night, everybody.
Great.